Stranger Things has gone on for too long, and many people still don't know some insane and hidden secrets about the show. However, we've compiled these top 10 hidden secrets you never knew were going on with Stranger Things. In the show, we got to see how the Upside Down got its name, being the alternate dimension of Hawkins, but that wasn't always the initial name in the script and for the cast. Also surprising is that the real name of the Upside Down sounds less frightening, as it was initially called the Nether. The script in production for season 1 referred to the alternate space as the Nether, but it was scripted that Eleven called it the Upside Down for her description because she was new to the world and interpretation of things. But as the show picked up, they decided to drop that name and call it the Upside Down, which seems more realistic for the alternate Hawkins than the Nether. However, some cast and crew members still refer to Upside Down as the Nether, as it was the first name they got used to before it was switched. Speaking of names, Stranger Things almost had a completely different name, which you will be glad was changed because it was initially meant to be called Montauk. Stranger Things has been a great hit show that has changed everything for everyone over the last decade, and it was almost not named that at all, which could have been disastrous as the name was one of the things that made the show. We obviously would have gotten a different show and vibe with a title like Montauk. The show was initially meant to be named after the conspiracy theories of government experiments in Montauk, New York. It was also planned to be set in New York, which could have affected the show's direction compared to how we know it now. The Duffer Brothers initially based the show on a series of urban legends about the alleged project in Montauk. There are claims that government researchers in Camp Hero, Montauk, conducted secret experiments in the 1970s and 80s which involved mind control, time travel, and communication with extraterrestrial life forms. So, Stranger Things initially centered around these claims. If they had gone with Montauk, it could have restricted the bigger supernatural tale that Stranger Things represents. It's even crazier when you discover why it was changed. The Duffer Brothers planned to film the show on and around Long Island, but it came with some challenges as the location wasn't feasible. The weather wasn't so good, and it looked expensive as they had to shoot far from the production's main base. They had to reconsider the location, and it was changed to the fictional Hawkins in Indiana, which later influenced the name. Also, the executives at Netflix disapproved of Montauk, leading to the creators changing it to Stranger Things. Undoubtedly, the monsters in Stranger Things are super scary and dangerous, but behind the scenes, you wouldn't believe the secret object used to represent a monster. Of course, CGI is utilized in post-production to make the monsters real, but usually, on set, they get an extra to wear a green screen suit, not in the case of the Mind Flayer in the final scene of season 3, as the actors saw a beach ball at the end of a stick on set. It sounds wild and weird to be running from a beach ball and pretending it's scary and dangerous, but that's what Dacre Montgomery, who played Billy, had to face on set. So all he had to do was act like the ball was a huge monster because the ball represented the focus point for the monster's mouth. Also, during the Jurassic Park-inspired scenes with the kids hiding behind counters, the beach ball was placed on the counter to cosplay the Beast. There's a big difference between having a ball cosplay a scary character and having a human wearing a scary costume on set. Billy had to make it super believable that a strange creature was confronting him, but this didn't apply to Sadie Sink in the scene with Vecna because Sadie was terrified when she saw Jamie Campbell in the costume, and it made Max's reaction to Vecna even more powerful on the screen. Sadie said, "Having Jamie actually there was very helpful because he was genuinely just horrifying. It's just not normal what you're looking at, so you're kind of tricking your mind in a way, and it makes stepping into Max's shoes that much easier. It makes so much sense because an object wasn't used to replace Vecna, and he had to get into the costume with scary prosthetics and makeup and use his own voice for the character. It was also genuine for Sadie because Jamie used method acting, which further scared her." Sadie explained, saying, "You can put anyone in that costume and they can be scary, but with Jamie, he was so in it all the time. He liked to stay in character a lot, and there would be times and longer setups and stuff where he would filter in and out of it, but for a lot of the mind layer stuff, there was not a lot of talking going on between us. So even when they weren't filming, Jamie was growling and acting as Vecna, and Sadie had no choice but to be afraid." When Stranger Things Season 2 premiered, people didn't only get to see the dark things going on in Hawkins, but also Eleven's special interest in waffles. It was a significant influencing period for Eggo waffles because the show did a great one by causing a shift in the sales of Eggo waffles. Interest in waffles. It was a significant influencing period for Eggo waffles because the show did a great one by causing a shift in the sales of Eggo waffles. Interest waffles. Interest in waffles. The chief executive mentioned that they immediately leveraged the opportunity as their sales declined before the show brought them into the spotlight. In season 2, after Will Byers got possessed, he was originally planned to execute Bob Newby instead of the Demodogs, which would have changed Will's story entirely. Bob was also a fan favorite character who was introduced as a strong father figure to Will before he was gotten rid of, and making Will get rid of him would have been a disaster. Stranger Things might be about a dark and wild alternate universe, but also about family and support. It would have ruined Will completely if he was responsible for Bob's demise, which is why it was amazing to have this storyline changed and make it possible for Will to go through some crucial developments over the years in the show. It's become a big and awesome joke among the Stranger Things fans on how Steve is a nanny to the kids he's friends with in the show because they've bonded so well, and there's a hidden fact that Will, one of the kids, has never had a direct conversation with Steve on the show. Although it's clear that they are close to each other, they haven't had a one-on-one discussion like Steve has done with some of the Hawkins kids. While this is primarily because they hardly have anything to talk about, it's also because they have different directions in the show that haven't made them speak directly to each other. Will disappeared at the beginning of season 1 and wouldn't have talked to Steve because they aren't age mates. And at the time, Steve was an absolute jerk to Will's brother, Jonathan and Nancy. Even after Steve changed and Will returned, it was impossible in season 2 because Will got possessed. And wouldn't have talked to Steve because they aren't age mates. And at the time, Steve changed and Will returned, it was impossible in season 2 because Will got possessed. And wouldn't have talked to Steve because they aren't age mates. And at the time, Steve changed and Will returned, it was impossible and Will got possessed. And wouldn't have talked to Steve because they aren't age mates. Sadie wrote the letter that Max read at Billy's grave, and she studied Max's character, how she would write, and the things she would say in a letter to form the write-up. Sadie described the letter as a script print hybrid because of the unique way Max would write, which differs from how Max's handwriting was designed in the script. The actress also studied Max's character and emotional unavailability through journaling and imagining what Max would say to others in her letters. Handwriting was designed in the script. The actress also studied Max's character and emotional unavailability through journaling and others in her letters. Millie said, "They wanted me to feel like an alien, but also have genuine relationships like the one with Mike. At first, she was confused about how she could be an alien and still act like a human, but everything became super clear to her as soon as she got the reference and learned from it." Another hidden but exciting fact about Stranger Things is that the cast, Charlie Heaton and Natalia Dyers, have been dating for 9 years in real life and have also been dating for the same number of years as their characters, Jonathan and Nancy. The pair met on the show where they play boyfriend and girlfriend, and they started dating in real life, which means their relationship has lasted the entire time it takes Stranger Things to produce all 5 seasons without any scandal or breakup.